What is going on, YouTube people? Today, boy, oh boy, this PSA vending machine has gone off the rails. The rails over the last week plus. I think it was back on like the 28th. It was late last week, the week before 4th of July, when this thing popped up and took the internet by storm. And then the internet did its thing, started poking around, digging around, and this thing just kept getting worse and worse and worse. If you remember, I did a video about this about a week ago. I haven't really talked about it much since, as a bunch of stuff has come out. So let's kind of run through some of this stuff. Rattle Pokemon has done multiple videos on this. SCR Sports Card Radio spent a ton of time on this on their live stream last night. I know Dan the Cardman had multiple videos on this as well. He noticed that we'll talk about this in a second, that the Charizard PSA 10 on the side has a deactivated cert number. So this thing pops up in a Vegas casino. That's already it clearly looks like it is owned and operated by PSA. I get there is a statement on the side of the machine, I guess, that said it's not affiliated with PSA. It is a Canon Rock Incorporated machine, but it clearly looks like a PSA vending machine at first glance. There is no checklist. There is no odds. There is no nothing. So just all that stuff alone makes you go, wait, what's going on here? When this first came out, I did reach out to PSA directly back on, I believe it was June 28th or 29th. And they told me explicitly that this was not their machine, that this was a partnership that they had with a third party for branding, which they then back up. They have since released a formal statement right before July 4th, basically kind of laying out pretty much what they told me about 5 or 6 days previous to this. So, of course, that led people to say, well, if PSA is not running this thing, who the hell is running this thing? And that's where things went even more off the rails. People did some digging around, some names popped up. Once again, all the players that I mentioned before were kind of involved in this. Auburn 35, Rattle, SCR, Dan, among probably others that I'm just not aware of, blowout forums. And it ties back to some folks that ran the Heroes of Sport repack product, which, if you've heard that name before, if you followed SCR Sports Card Radio for a very long time, I remember them talking about that on their original podcast back in the day, years ago, about all the shady stuff that went on with that repack product. No stated odds, juiced boxes, things being hidden, potentially trimmed cards, all sorts of craziness and shenanigans around that. There's a ton of content out there about Heroes of Sport if you dig around on it from Sports Card Radio and on their website. So now it all circles back to what the hell went on here. You know, did clearly people at PSA signed off on this thing? Someone at Canon Rock designed this, put it all together. There is another third-party vending company that actually created the machine, like built the machine itself. They make these custom vending machines for people. But Canon Rock is the one that is essentially filling it with their inventory. They are basically a repacker. They are grading cards for repacks, and this is their repack. Instead of one that they send out to a breaker to break, it is getting loaded into this machine. The question then becomes, you know, they put this machine together, put the branding on it. You know, they had a co-branding deal with PSA. That much is clear. This machine or versions of this machine may or may not be at the National. I am not sure what's currently happening with that. They were on PSA's website. It looks like a lot of that stuff got pulled over the course of this week. And at some point, somewhere along the line, this thing went off the rails. Someone looked at this and said, or multiple people signed off on the branding on this and said, yep, cool, looks good, go for it. To me, that seems like a mistake, because this thing clearly looks like a PSA cabinet. I don't care what anyone says. This thing looks like it is owned and operated by PSA. I know there's a disclaimer on the side of the cabinet in fine print I'm sure somewhere else in fine print it says that it's not PSA. But that thing, the optics of it are PSA. And the narrative on social was that this thing is a PSA owned and operated cabinet. Not coming from PSA, but just people going up to this thing and making content. Hey, we're going to the PSA machine. Hey, we're going to the PSA cabinet. Hey, we pulled the crank on the PSA slot machine, whatever you want to call it. So whoever signed off on the branding of this thing, that seems to have been mistake. Actually, number 2. Mistake number 1 was potentially signing the business deal with Canon Rock in the first place. Now, we'll never know this. Did they know the players involved over there when they signed off on this? Or did they not, or did they not do their due diligence? There's a couple diverging paths here. They either knew and didn't care. They either didn't know and maybe casually glanced and didn't see anything wrong, or they didn't know and they didn't look into it at all. Either way, none of those are real great. I don't know if, maybe they thought, oh, no one will ever figure this out. No one's ever going to dig into this. But this machine being in a casino is just alarm bells everywhere before you even get into the people behind the scenes running the cabinet and all this co-branding stuff and Heroes of Sport, all this nonsense. Before any of that even comes into play, this thing is questionable at best and was going to have a billion eyeballs on it and torn apart piece by piece because of the optics on it. Repacks, hot button issue. Gambling in the sports card space, hot button issue. Regulation, hot button issue. Grading companies, hot button issue. This is like this thing is a dream machine for content creators. Let's just be honest. This thing is a content creator's dream come true. The amount of content that you can make off the back of this cabinet is, the gambling aspect of it, the repack aspect of it, everything that we just talked about. Before you even get into the character of the people running the cabinet itself that is not PSA. So this thing was doomed to get picked apart all over the place. Even without PSA's branding on there, this thing would have got picked apart. PSA's branding on there makes it even worse. And then the fact that the Charizard on the side, as Dan, the card man, pointed out, that the Charizard on the side of the box that's advertised, air quote, advertised as the hit, is a deactivated cert number. And I think on the other side that we can't see it in most of the photos that I saw is a Jordan PSA 10. And I think both of these were on PSA's website. I think I saw in Rattle Pokemon's video. So just all sorts of bad here. And now, of course, PSA is trying to distance themselves from this. I don't think this is the last we see of these machines. I think they will be redone and you will see them without the PSA branding being as prominent, or maybe after this, the PSA branding not being on there at all. Or maybe this thing completely blows up in their face and they're just like, hey guys, sorry, we can't do this. There's too much blowback from this. This is a radioactive isotope. We can't touch it. And that's probably the way that it may end up heading. We'll see. It'd be very interesting to see if this thing's at the National or not. I'd be surprised if it was. And ultimately, it kind of like the idea of a repack machine, if done correctly on paper, I mentioned it in the video I did over a week ago when this thing first came out. I would 100% get suckered in to this thing. I just know I would. And I don't even really buy in the repacks. The packaging, and when I say packaging, I'm talking about like the total packaging, not the individual box. The way this thing is designed, works, etc., is slick. The idea, in theory, from a let's innovate on the repack space is interesting to me. All that stuff intrigues me. Now, is it gambling or not? Yes. Is it legally gambling? No. It's just the world that we live in. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, is it a duck? In this case, no. This thing is basically a slot machine, but not really. Not really. And I don't know, some of the things that you would do to actually make this thing legitimate is like, post a chaser, have a checklist, that sort of stuff. It gets really tricky on something that's not getting all open simultaneously. I guess you could load it and then you would have to wait for the inventory to run completely empty before you reloaded it. I don't know how else you would be able to do it to keep it on the up and up. But the idea of this thing, it would be interesting to kind of sit down in a meeting and pick it apart. How could something like this in theory work if you wanted it to, with the right people behind it, obviously. But this thing was destined to get just absolutely shredded. And then you have the complications of the people that are involved with it on the back end now on top of it. So this thing was the ultimate, like the snowball rolling down the hill and just gaining momentum. Every day it was something new. It started with wait, what is this? Into a, hold on, wait, is this actually a PSA cabinet? Is this thing a slot machine? Wait, this isn't a casino? Are you kidding me? Is there a checklist? Wait, the Zards on the side of the cabinet is deactivated? Wait, PSA isn't actually running this? Wait, are they? Aren't they? We don't really know. Nobody really knows. Oh, wait, PSA is saying they're actually not involved with this. It's just a branding deal. Oh, wait, so who is actually behind it? Oh, that's who's behind it? Oh, boy. Who? Danger, Will Robinson, danger. That's kind of been the life of this thing this week and where we sit today on Saturday morning as I am recording this video and getting ready to post it. I was going to talk about this in the weekly sports card market update, and I knew that it would go long, and I didn't want to completely derail that video with this. So that is where we currently sit with this contraption. So the questions going forward from now: how quickly does this thing take the rebrand? What do they rebrand it to? Does it have any, outside of it being PSA graded cards in the machine, does it have any external ties where PSA's name is on there anywhere? Do they change the wrap so it doesn't match, that red checkered? Do they change that so it doesn't match the red checkering on PSA's website? Because that's a direct pull from PSA's website. How much of that stuff changes around? How quickly does it change? Does it even exist anymore at all? Those are all the questions that we kind of have going forward that are going to play out as time goes on here. And you could definitely see PSA trying to distance themselves from this thing as quickly as humanly possible. Clearly some mistakes were made along the lines here, or just ignorance, one or the other. Safety checks did not hold up in this one. Someone along the line somewhere should have called a timeout and go, wait a second, hold up. Is this really what we want to be doing, guys? Is this really what we want to be doing? Because all of this could have happened without the PSA branding. And we would have, if it wasn't for the co-branding deal, they never get drug into this. It's switch the narrative on this. It would be, oh man, a repack vending machine? Holy smokes. Wait, who's doing it? Oh God. Oh, that's not great. And then it would be, 25th on the list would be that it's all PSA graded cards. No one would care. No one would care that it was all PSA graded cards. It'd be very easy to be like, of course it's all PSA graded cards. They're the biggest grading company. They grade the most cards. But because of the co-branding deal, that's where this thing fell apart. And if PSA wanted their own vending machines like this to have in the booth or whatever for marketing and promotion, cool, but make it look completely different from whatever is out there in the wild. As always, curious for your thoughts and comments down below. This one was a wild one. This thing just has so many tentacles, and I'm willing to bet we have not seen the end of it yet. Like I said, this thing is a content creation dream come true. Dream come true. Catch you boys and girls tomorrow for the weekly sports card market update. Peace.